we are.
Here we are.
I told you.
The final countdown.
Let's not open this podcast with singing, and then that's what you do. I know what to do. Just tell you, reverse psychology. Tell you what to do. That way you won't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, that's.
You should really sing sometime.
Sometimes, yeah. I will try. I will try it.
Oh, here we are. Tuesday, Sunday leftovers.
All
right. After Labor Day, we all took the day off yesterday, so there's like this moat in my mind between Sunday and apologies to those of you who were watching along. The audio dropped from the live stream right as I was making probably my most important point, and it was almost as if
you could say the most important in your entire life. Anyways, it's
gone. It's gone. I already told you the most important thing. Yeah. No, but it was like, seriously, if Vladimir Putin himself got on the keyboard and wanted to sabotage the sermon, that would have been the point to cut, and that's right when it dropped.
It was like the cat with the name.
Yeah. So I'll begin this by finishing that point, because if those of you
that's good.
Who were watching didn't hear how that ended. It's a conversation in Luke 14 that Jesus has about the cost of discipleship, and I kind of liken to that too, sort of the small print. This is the real deal of what this is going to cost you. Like if the sign says it's $3.29 for a gallon of gas, the small print says if you pay with our card or something like that, it's actually $3.39. So this is Jesus telling the crowd or those gathered around the small print of discipleship, and I'll get back to that in a second. But the sentence that was interrupted with the audio, I was making the point about I hang on to my relationships and my things. Mm-hmm. As if my very life depended on the having of those things. I hang on to it's not easy to get a thing out of my clenched fist, and part of that is my life growing up in poverty. Part of that is just my mindset of scarcity that's a result of that life. But the point was, and here's what it said, I hang on to those things as if my very life depended on it, but it doesn't. My life depends on my commitment to something much, much deeper, as it turns out, and this was the sentence that stopped. My actual life depends on my commitment to the life of God in me, not to the things with which I surround myself to feel safe and to feel secure. And so where the shock talk about discipleship, and it's going to cost you everything, by the way, hate all your family, hate your very life. I think what Jesus is trying to say is that something far beneath all of the security and safety that those things provide for us, there is actually a pristine self. There is a person. You could call it the heart. There is whatever you want to call it. But there is a space in which discipleship is either active or it isn't. And what I mean by this is you can do the things disciples do. You can read and pray, and you can give to the poor. You can do all the things outwardly that disciples do. But if at the very core of who you are, at that center space, if your first and most austere commitment isn't to life of God in you, then we're not following the detachment that Jesus modeled for us, okay? So that word detachment doesn't turn up a lot in Western Christianity. That surfaces in Eastern philosophy, surfaces in Buddhism, and surfaces in the East, right? So I mentioned something that the Buddha taught, which I find to be very profound, which is simply that suffering is caused by unbridled desire, the want of whatever. It could be virtuous things, it could be not virtuous things, but to live in a constant state of seeking and finding and trying to get that next thing and wanting really is the definition of suffering, according to the Buddha. So I like to use the word detachment. Part of it is because I'm constantly shopping for a word that says some of what the word discipleship says, but that word discipleship has just been so sullied for me. Because it came to equate in the spaces in which I flowed in the megachurch before I worked here in Austin. It came to equate how many people were you getting in a classroom teaching the book of Romans, for example. That was discipleship. And the reality is you can sit on the front row of the greatest church in the world, and you can sing all the words and you can do all the things and not be transformed. So discipleship is about something more than those external actions.
For sure.
It has to be something more internal. And the word I love the most is detachment. And the reason I love the word detachment is because I think this is what it actually requires to be a disciple. I've said this many, many times, and I think you guys understand this by now, but I think the greatest technology in the school of Jesus is this. Letting go. Free falling, letting go, releasing, giving up, stop resisting.
That is so hard for us. We love our stuff. We love our thoughts. We love
all of
all
it.
the things that we gather around us to provide security.
Yeah.
As you said at the beginning.
Which is, I think, why a mystic teacher like Jesus, will grab a hold of those things that we think hold center, and he'll just shake those things. And I mean, this is my story. This story of my life as a disciple of Jesus, as a follower, as a Christian, is that whatever I'm holding most tightly to, life just shakes it, and then hopefully in time I learn to do this naturally, right? So I think that idea of detachment to me is a more functional word because it allows us to define it with the essential moving parts without all the baggage of the word discipleship. I just think it's a word that we have to refresh words once in a while.
Yeah.
So I see discipleship as detachment.
For me, it's good detachment, but for sure, maybe, it's a word that we can reclaim, but detachment, I like it.
How would you say the word detachment in Spanish?
Desapegarse.
Yeah.
Desapegarse.
Desapegamiento.
Desapego.
Desapego, that's the word,
That's
el desapego. I think it's impossible to follow Jesus for very long with having to willfully detach, right? And of course, Jesus, the metaphor he will use eventually, and the metaphor of his life, the motif of his life will be, death is the great equalizer, and death will pull through anything, what it pulls through the other side, you'll have to release it all. And death is a conversation in our congregation these days. We've lost some people, even just yesterday, and it's a shocking way to have to learn the lesson. But here's the point, and here's the hope, and here's what lingers in my heart. There is an us that is unfazed by the things we have and the things we lose. There is a me. There is I would say, a divine self. Now I know that's controversial, but there is a core center of my being that has always known God, that is unsullied by my attachments to the things that I think provide me what I need. If you fly around the sun enough times, whether disease or loss or death, or just simply wearing yourself out, you will discover as a follower of Jesus that all things we cleave to and hang to will be questioned. Our relationship with those things will come into question. What never comes into question is the core of my being, the center of my being. I was talking with some dear friends after church last Sunday at our first Sunday lunch at ABGB. ABGB is just Austin Beer Garden and Brewery. About that terminology for God, the ground of being. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about God as sort of a post-personal concept. Now, hang on, this might get a little weird. And of the 13 people following me, we might have 7. I dare all 14 of you to hang on here. Yeah. God is post-person in the sense that language that describes God as a person is deeply limiting. Mm-hmm. Right. So using a word like God as the ground of being is a way of saying whatever the isness that life roots itself to, that's what is God.
Is that a concept from Paul Tillich? I think so.
It comes from Paul Tillich, and it comes through a bunch of different ways now, but it also comes from the East, from writers in the East. But it does come from Paul Tillich. Anyway, releasing this idea that God is a person and sliding into post-personhood, or I know it's philosophical, post-particularity, into the ground of being itself allows us to understand that we are rooted in that same ground of being. Right. Okay, so that's the you and the me that is a disciple or not. Jesus seems unbelievably unwilling to address the external features of discipleship. For example, do disciples observe the Sabbath or do they not? Do they heal on the Sabbath or do they not? Do they touch lepers or do they not? Do they cavort with women or do they not? Especially women.
Do they fast or do they not?
Do they fast or do they not?
Yeah.
Do they talk to women who can't seem to stay married?
Right.
Do they hang out in Samaria? Do they touch the children of Roman centurions? All of these things, you would have to say disciples don't do these things, and yet that never seems to concern Jesus. What holds front and center is this deeper conversation around the roots of your ground of being are unfoldings of the life of God. You named your congregation after amor original, after sort of the reverse concept from original sin.
Right.
We talk about original goodness. Do you know that's a foundation of Islam? Did you know that? Did you know that Islam does not teach that people are originally full of sin, which is one of the great points where we don't align, except I do, because I believe, anyway. All that to say, detachment from those things with which we surround ourselves is the invitation of God. That's the invitation that Christ offers. So it's not an easy conversation, right? Because the first thing I want to say is, yeah, but that thing makes me sleep well because I know that my needs are provided for. And how many of us have come through seasons of our life where even those things we hang on to as if they are an extension of our identity are taken from us? Fathers, mothers, brothers, spouses, siblings, or careers, wealth,
That's right.
or influence, or the loss of influence and impact. A lot of my friends that do this work for a living are dealing with now, as they look up from a 2-year or 3-year silence, they're looking out at almost no one who's listening now. And that the depression that comes from losing that kind of influence, we have to detach from that. Because we are well either way. Either way, we are well. I think that's what Jesus is. I don't know. That's what he's teaching me. That's what life is teaching me.
Right.
So I would say this way: any conversation with Jesus, anything that Jesus seems to talk about that we hear him say, and Luke preserves a lot of it, anything related to discipleship is going to be a conversation around: are we willing and able to follow into full detachment? Can we follow into full detachment? So discipleship is followership through death into freedom. I mean,
So
we could twist this a million ways.
That's your new definition for discipleship. Can you say it again?
Freedom that comes through detachment. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've just made that up as we go. That's
But
how,
it's
and I'll
good.
never remember it.
It's good. It's a good idea. At least this is going
Yeah.
to get recorded.
I just think it's becoming crystal clear now. There was a time in my life when I would have said, to be a disciple, you have to act a certain way in worship. Or you have to do a certain thing with your money, or you have to dress a certain way. That was way, way back. Or, there's certain games that you don't play on a Sunday, or certain games with cards you don't play at all. You know all the things, right? To be a disciple means you can exercise your freedom not to drink alcohol and all those things, right? All the different things that I used to think it was so many things, and I don't hold them dearly anymore because life has taken from me those things. I think it's deeper. I think it's freedom that comes through death and rebirth that happens that is the process of detachment. I think that's what it's about. Anyway,
That's nice. When I first was exposed to a different kind of discipleship was because of my cousins. When I was a teenager, actually.
your cousins
My cousin.
that lived across the street from you?
No. The other cousin.
Otros primos.
In Chile.
Oh, in Chile.
And his name is Pablo.
Uh-huh.
And I remember that he told me,
Yeah.
this was weird when I was, 18, 17.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm doing some discipleship to one of the kids of the church.
Right.
And I said, I imagine immediately what the religions teach us about discipleship. I mean, you gather some people, you read the scripture, you teach them something specifically, all of that.
Yeah.
And I was trying to do the same for the youth in my
In
my
your group,
church.
Yeah.
So I asked him, so how do you do that? And that's one of the first challenging definitions that I received when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And he said, I just hang out with him. He came,
Yeah.
we drink some stuff, we eat some stuff.
Yeah.
We go
Simple
to the
stuff.
hill and we watch some movies and hear
Yeah.
some. And I said, and that's disciples?
Yeah.
For my religious perspective, that wasn't discipleship at all.
Yeah.
So now this is something even
interesting.
more revolutionary, and I like it.
Yeah.
I like it both things. Definitely, we need to detach from our previous version of discipleship because
and
it
actually
causes many damage for
that's an
all of
interesting
us.
point. One of the hardest things to detach from is our previously passionately held religious views about discipleship itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Because for a religious perspective, it feels so good.
So why does it feel good? I think
I
it
don't
feels
know.
good because it allows us to say, this is my people and I feel safe here.
Yeah, probably it's,
It's
the
all
it's a
sociological.
tribal mentality.
It's a tribal, it's
tribal
primal,
mentality.
it's tribal, it's sociological.
But also it's that feeling that you are receiving the answers that other people are looking for.
Right.
But you already figure it out.
So let's end on this point since we're running out of, since time is wasting. That's an interesting thing. We evangelicals, of which I don't number myself anymore, but we think that discipleship is teaching and learning. Now watch. If you take everything that the gospel writers remember Jesus to have said and you put it in one place, that might take a rabbi 3 or 4 or 5 days to teach. We have virtually no preserved teaching, no volume of teaching from Jesus enough to, we certainly don't have the commensurate volume of teaching from Jesus to be able to say, to be his disciple is to just be taught. It's much more do life with, right? It's much more, but here's what I'm beginning to see with his disciples, his friends. It's learning the conflicts, the controversies, the flare-ups, the personal family fabric breakdowns. Those are, and walking through those things, allowing life to take from us all other things that make us feel safe, until we get to the point where that part of us that is rooted in the life of God is well, despite all these other things. I don't know that it matters how much you give yourself to one aspect or not. Life is faithful to take from you the things to which you detach. This is why the central metaphor of Christianity is death and resurrection.
Right.
Which is the core truth of the cosmos. It's the basic fundamental scientific reality of all that is.
It works
Nothing
that way.
goes away. It remains. It just reconfigures. This is not that profound. And it's not, I mean, everything, you can take a log and burn it and it went nowhere. It's still here in the cosmos. It transformed, right? And so anyway, all that to say, detachment to me is the metaphor. So then the question becomes, how willing are we to detach? And I think that puts all of us on a level playing ground. The preachers, the professionals, the missionaries, the seminary teachers are at no great advantage over any of the rest of us when it comes to doing this.
Yeah, and to answer that properly, I think we need to take time for ourselves and to take a deeper view of our inside.
That's right.
To realize how to answer that.
Yeah. Yeah, and a way to figure out, if you just want to do an inventory, what are you attached to? What are the things that when touched you panic? What elicits fear in you? What relationships that when they start to show a crack, you panic because you can't conceive of a you outside of that? Let me tell you, life will do that. And still, the commitment that discipleship requires is a commitment to the life of God in you, which is just beneath all of those things. Which is why then it's not that radical that Jesus would say every other thing, including your love of life itself, is secondary to this commitment. What is that commitment? A commitment to the life of God in me. That's the bottom line as I see it. So there you go.
You know, it's a very nice paradigm to reread the Gospels. Attachment
Versus detachment. Yeah.
detachment. I mean, like
That's the problem with these pesky old letters is as soon as you read them, you feel like, no, I want to go back and read it. And then we just do this for the rest of our lives, which is why it still has so much meaning to me. I mean, I love other people's sacred texts too, but I have sea legs in mine. I've got decades, and it still instructs and it still challenges.
It is.
Yeah, good stuff.
Okay.
All right, Sunday leftovers.
That was great. Let me